What's going on, y'all? I'm KMBest. I just made a video about how broken Loki is, so let's try to beat him. I have put 8 decks together that I want to test into Loki. These are my best ideas for beating Loki. All of these decks are built along similar principles. You want to be a deck that Loki does not benefit very much from getting cards out of. This means you need to be a little bit finicky. You need to be the kind of deck that Loki will get a bunch of cards out of and be like, how does this go together in a profitable way? This also means that you can't play any counters to yourself. If you're a deck that's going very tall, you can't play Shang-Chi. If you're a Cerebro deck relying on Valkyrie and on Shadow King, you can't play Luke Cage. So with that in mind, let's jump into the decks. First up is Shuri Sauron, a deck that I actually just 8-cubed a Loki gamer with just before recording this video, so I'm feeling pretty high on it right now. The ethos of this deck is to just go as tall as humanly possible. Sauron into Shuri into Red Skull is generally how you want to accomplish that. If you are able to do so, that is 33 points in one lane, Taskmaster plus Ebony Maw on another one. Most of these decks are cutting Shang-Chi because they are so weak to Shang-Chi in mirrors, and that means that you can take advantage of that by just going insanely tall. You, of course, have America Chavez in order to facilitate your nut draw, which is kind of what you need to do when all the Loki decks are running America Chavez as well. You also get a little bit of benefit from giving your opponent your hand because it's a lot of cards that aren't super useful. Ebony Maw sucks for them. Typhoid Mary's going to give their stuff negative power. Red Skull's going to buff your stuff unless they, of course, get Zero and Sauron or Sauron off of their Lokis. They're still going to be able to put out a decent amount of power, but if you are able to output your main game plan, they tend to get things that are a little bit worse or just worse enough that you should be able to come out on top. A deck in a similar vein to Shuri Sauron in terms of combating Loki is Discard. The plan here is to go as tall as we possibly can, and in the service of going as tall as we possibly can, hopefully also create a deck that is finicky enough and awkward enough that our opponent, should they be a Loki deck, doesn't get the right cards in their hand in order to combat us. Now, in order to accomplish that, the discard shell makes a lot of sense. You need specific cards in a specific order in order for this shell to actually be compelling, and hopefully we're just saying the Loki player does not get those cards. Morbius is one of the few 2-drops that can scale about as high as Collector can. Maybe not in Loki mirrors, but against you, the Collector's not often getting past, 10, 11. Morbius can actually compete with that, so that is a plus to this. And of course, we have our Dracula plays, our gigantic Dracula, if we can pull it off, alongside an Apocalypse, alongside America Chavez, in order to make sure that we do all of this as much as possible. You'll also note that Blade has been included alongside Dakin and Absorbing Man, and this innovation was brought to my attention by Mickey, and the idea here is basically, we want something else that goes absurdly tall. Other people are going to be cutting Shang-Chi from their Loki decks in order to beat the mirror, so we want a bunch of ways to go as absurdly tall as possible, and we're not overly concerned with Shangs right now, given their relative lack of appearance rate because of all the Loki. Here's where we get a little more speculative. This is a Bast Mr. Negative Surfer Darkhawk deck that is looking to attack very clearly along multiple axes. So first of all, we have the Black Widow and the Darkhawk, hopefully to make it less likely that they draw their absolute nut curve. Secondly, we have the power of a Silver Surfer strategy without necessarily giving all of that to our opponent unless they also get the Silver Surfer. Hopefully they either get like just the Silver Surfer or, just some of the 3s, but nothing too incredible, and that ends up good for us. Finally, there's also a Mr. Negative plan so that they get the bad Mr. Negative cards that are in our deck that are there to be facilitated by Mr. Negative, but we, with Mr. Negative, get to actually play them. So I think this deck is a solid method of just attacking along multiple axes, making it so the cards that they draw are just kind of bad and weird because they need to be facilitated by Bast, by Silver Surfer, by Mr. Negative in order to be actually elite. And so the Loki deck will be playing with a worse version of your deck, theoretically. Now, this list is one that will kind of work, but the issue is a lot of the Loki decks are stapled to just very powerful mid-range decks. They don't need to nut high roll you in order to beat you as Mr. Negative. They just need to wait for when you aren't doing anything because you're still a Mr. Negative deck, and there are going to be some draws that just absolutely clunk. In a similar vein, a deck that is looking to just high roll as high as possible, and just hopefully that is enough. Shuri Nimrod is something that is hard to replicate for a Loki deck, and we are looking to also just give them a bunch of cards that don't help them. All of our cards that blow stuff up, like Deathlock and Carnage and Venom they can use, but Deathlock, Carnage, they're not really in the business of a lot of the time. And so we're looking to say, all right, look, we're going to do Shuri Nimrod. We have Destroyer. You don't want to get Destroyer. You don't want to get Carnage. You don't want to get Deathlock. There are some things that they do want to get, like a Null, obviously, is pretty dangerous to you. But hopefully the idea here is just we're gonna ramp this out. We're gonna get it out there with the Electro. We then kill our Electro off if we want to, and then go for even more Nimrods everywhere. So there are two real high roll game plans here, both of them involving Nimrod. The first one is, of course, Electro Nimrod Destroyer, and then two Boom Boom guys on the Nimrods that we have, creating just an enormous board. And the second is, of course, Shuri into Nimrod into two Boom Boom guys, creating a lot of 12 power Nimrods on the board. Now, the issue, of course, is when we don't do that, we're kind of not doing a lot. So that is the downside of building a finicky go-high deck, is sometimes we're just like not drawing the right cards in the right order. Next up is a list near and dear to my heart. This specific Cerebro 3 list was brewed in my Discord with the express intention of scamming Loki. So far, it has taken one person all the way up to rank 2, that'd be Derek, and it was brewed by actually one of my mods, KX4N, so shout out to my Discord for brewing to beat this card while I was complaining about it. So far, this is the list that I think probably on here has seen the most success right now. It is still a Cerebro list, but it activates a couple of important principles here. First, it doesn't play cards that it loses to. So we lose Luke Cage, but instead we have Scarlet Witch and Rhino to remove problematic locations. In addition, we also have a couple of other ways to deal with awkward situations, like a Valkyrie can even get rid of the 9-power monster on a monster island, for example. And of course, we have Professor X to scam as hard as we absolutely possibly can. Scamming is always awesome. We love to scam if we can pull it off. And we need the Wasp for the Valkyrie. We also have the Wasp as payoff for the Bast. A lot of good things can happen when playing this list. It is, of course, you know, still a Cerebro list, and that will never change. But it does seem like a compelling list to play right now, and something that I would be interested in trying. Next up is a Thanos list, and this is a list built along the lines of the old Astrolad list, a Spectrum Thanos list. And the idea here is basically, since Loki doesn't get Thanos stones, we want to play cards that synergize with Thanos stones, so that then when they get them, they're just like, oh, what is this crap, right? Khazar, with very minimal one-cost cards, is not going to do a lot for them, but it can do a lot for us. Something like a Valkyrie, not going to do a lot for them, going to do a lot for us. Shadow King, not going to do a lot for them, going to do a lot for us. You kind of see the pattern here, that the whole deck is sort of built with that in mind. We just want to make sure that we have like a reasonable game plan elsewhere, but I think the main issue that Thanos has right now, honestly, is the nerf to Soulstone. It's still a card we use very effectively in this list, thanks to Valkyrie, but it's felt. It is definitely felt when you are not drawing a card off that Soulstone, especially in a list that is, you know, a lot of the cards in this list are pretty mid. You definitely need to run downhill with this, with the stones. So obviously your Mind Stones are incredibly powerful because they just get you going downhill, but they don't get you downhill as consistently as they used to, because a lot of the time you're just able to freely play a Soulstone, and now that's not drawing you a card. You have to play a little bit more fair. It's just the truth. Next up is the Move Wave archetype, which a lot of people suggest, okay, just go play High Evo Wave here. And in my experience, High Evo Wave just doesn't do it against the Loki deck. It's cute. It's the idea you'd come up with if you hadn't played the matchup, I feel like, but because it makes a lot of sense in theory, right? You gotta, all right, okay, we're gonna be a High Evo Wave deck. They get a bunch of bad cards off their Loki, and then we wave them on 5. But in practice, what happens is they're just really ahead, and then they like Loki or Doctor Doom, and then you like die. And that's like a very awkward spot in terms of actual Loki counterplay. This list has had a little bit more success. It is, of course, still weak to, you know, the Loki nut draw. If they Loki you on 4, you're just kind of screwed regardless. That's just, you got to take those L's while you can. But I do think that the basic idea here is we just want to get points on the board early that are hopefully competitive with theirs, and then wave late, and hopefully we're actually somewhere when we do. This list is better than the Tribunal lists at getting those points out early. And I think a really important key to this list is Shang-Chi. We get to play that, but it's bad for them if they get it, because nothing in this list is actually vulnerable to it. So that is a deck building consideration to take into account here, which is, you know, if you want to play Shang-Chi, you better be doing it in a deck that is not vulnerable to Shang-Chi. And so this list manages to leverage both that and, you know, the potential power for wave with early points. The issue, of course, is if they Loki on 4 and they know you're a wave deck, they're just going to whip your ass. Next up, I mean, we've spent this entire video talking about finicky decks that need specific things to actually work, and this is the finickiest of finicky decks that need specific things to actually work. Of course, it is Hela Tribunal. Pretty much what you're looking to do here is take as many turns as you want to play your dumb Hela combo, and then if they, for whatever reason, decide to Loki you, they are stuck with unplayable Infinite, unplayable Giganto. They get a Magneto, maybe that's fine. They get an Onslaught, maybe that's fine. They get a MODOK, they can't do anything with that. This is basically built entirely to do our high roll combo and then just sort of hopefully they don't have anything that they can actually get value out of when they play their Loki. They just get a bunch of cards that just don't do anything in the face of the high roll combo. It's been a common suggestion. When I've played Loki, I have mostly won this matchup, but it is one that I think maybe should not be ignored. Maybe this is a chance for people to start actually tuning this deck to actually be competent into a lot of the Loki decks. One thing I would be worried about, though, I've seen a lot of Loki Cosmos lately, and once those decks start playing Cosmo, your Invisible Woman plan just absolutely sucks. It is absolutely awful. You cannot do it. All right, y'all. I know a lot of people did not react particularly well to me saying stuff like, you know, Loki is broken. I got some responses that were like, you know, people need to stop crying for nerfs, just try to beat it. So this was my attempt at doing that. Let me know how these lists work for you. I'll, of course, be playing them on ladder myself more on my Twitch stream, twitch.tv/KMBestMS. And we're going to find out if this is a legitimately, like, beatable card. I feel like it's beatable, but not like something you want around, right? Like it might be within like a standard deviation of being fine, but the mirrors are so bad that you don't want it at the top of your meta anyway. But I just wanted to sort of, I guess, put my money where my mouth is and be like, look, okay, let's say I didn't want to play Loki. Here's what I would try. That's what this video is. I hope it helped you think about how to actually try to beat this card. I did want to, you know, make my little contribution to that. So thank you so much for watching. As always, I've been KMBest. Like, subscribe. I will see you in the next one.